My husband punched my pregnant sister in the stomach, and thank God he did. My husband walked up to my 8 months pregnant sister during her baby shower and punched her full force in the stomach. She folded in half and crashed backward into the gift table while 50 guests screamed. I shoved him backward, screaming, "What is wrong with you?" while my mom called 911 sobbing about assault on a pregnant woman. My dad and brothers pinned my husband against the wall, and I was hitting his chest, calling him a psychopath while my sister lay on the floor holding her belly and crying that something was wrong. Her boyfriend was checking for blood, and everyone was filming while my grandmother was having chest pains from the shock. My aunts grabbed their kids and ran while I dropped beside my sister trying to feel the baby kick, but she kept pushing my hands away saying, "Don't touch it, hurts too much." The neighbor who was a midwife tried to come help, but my sister curled into a ball screaming not to touch her stomach. My uncle was on the phone with his lawyer saying we needed to press charges for attempted murder of an unborn child, while my sister's mother-in-law fainted and had to be laid on the couch. My sister kept her arms wrapped around her stomach so tight nobody could get close, crying that she could feel something was wrong inside. "Look at her stomach where I hit her," my husband yelled while fighting against the men holding him, and I wanted to kill him until I saw it. A deep dent in my sister's belly that wasn't popping back out. That's memory foam under her dress, not a baby, and I can prove everything she's been doing. I got to my sister before she could stop me and felt around the dent. My hands went numb pressing against foam edges and Velcro straps where my nephew should have been. She's been buying different sized fake bellies online to fake the progression, stealing ultrasound photos from pregnancy forums and photoshopping her name on them, and scamming everyone for $30,000 in medical bills for appointments that never existed because I checked with every OB in the city. I kept pressing on the dented foam while my sister tried to push me away, and everyone started grabbing at her stomach, finding more straps and padding underneath. I followed her after she said she had an OB appointment yesterday, and she went to a bar and drank for 2 hours, then bought 3 more fake bellies at a costume shop downtown. My sister was crying, screaming at him to shut up, but he didn't listen. My grandmother looked like she was about to faint. My husband showed us her laptop from when she'd left it at our house. Search history full of realistic pregnancy bellies, and how to fake morning sickness and pregnancy symptoms by week, and what to say at baby shower. But here's why I had to stop this today, my husband said while struggling against my brother's grip, sweat pouring down his face. "I saw her at the hospital last week following a teenage patient around the maternity ward, and security footage shows she's been going to the teen pregnancy support group pretending to be pregnant for 2 months. Our mother was sobbing while my husband showed us screenshots from the hospital cameras of my sister trailing behind a young pregnant girl who was always alone, sitting next to her in the cafeteria, walking her to her car. She befriended this girl who has no family, found out she's being induced tomorrow morning at 6 a.m., and yesterday bought a car seat and nurse scrubs, and was checking tomorrow's shift schedules to find the window when the nurses change over. My sister had told everyone she was delivering at a birthing center that doesn't exist, planning to disappear tonight and come back tomorrow with a stolen newborn she'd claim was hers. She'd even been practicing forging birth certificates and had bought a breast pump and formula to make feeding the stolen baby look real, plus she'd been taking hormones to induce lactation. The foam belly shifted completely sideways, and my mom ripped my sister's dress up, exposing the entire prosthetic contraption strapped around her waist. Everyone was screaming, and my sister's boyfriend backed away from her while she looked for exits like a trapped animal. My cousin was on the phone with police describing the fraud and planned kidnapping while my aunts calculated how much money they'd given her for fake medical expenses. "You ruined everything!" my sister snarled at my husband, ripping off the fake belly and throwing it at his feet. "That teenager's a drug addict who doesn't deserve a baby, and I would have given it a perfect life." She started for the door, but my dad and brothers blocked her path, forming a wall. I watched my sister's face change into something I'd never seen before in 30 years of knowing her, like watching a mask finally fall off, and none of us were prepared for how far she was willing to go to get what she wanted. She broke free from my dad's grip and lunged straight at my husband with her nails out like claws. My brothers caught her midair and slammed her down onto the living room carpet. She was kicking and screaming that we ruined her perfect plan while the fake belly lay there dented and twisted. My husband kept yelling for everyone to listen about the hospital footage while my sister thrashed on the floor. The police sirens were already getting closer because my cousin had called them 5 minutes ago. My sister's boyfriend stood frozen by the couch, just staring at the foam prosthetic like his brain couldn't process it. 2 police cars pulled up and officers rushed through our front door while my sister tried to crawl toward the back exit. My cousin showed them her phone with all the screenshots my husband had sent of the purchases and hospital security footage. The officers looked at the fake belly on the floor and then at my sister who was still fighting my brothers. They pulled out handcuffs while she screamed that the teenage girl didn't deserve her baby anyway. She kept switching between sobbing about how we betrayed her and threatening what she'd do when she got out. The officers read her rights while dragging her toward the police car as all the neighbors came out to watch. My grandmother was clutching her chest on the couch while my aunts fanned her with napkins from the gift table. The detective who showed up said they needed to contact the hospital immediately about the teenage patient. My husband gave them Becca Torres's name and they called it in right away to get her protection. Within an hour, the hospital had moved her to a secure floor with guards posted outside her room. They got an emergency protection order signed by a judge that same night to keep my sister away. The detective said my sister had been watching this girl for 2 months according to the security footage. But then another officer walked up to my husband and said he was under arrest for assault. Everyone started yelling that he was protecting a baby from being kidnapped, but the officer said assault is assault. My husband put his hands behind his back while I scrambled to find our checkbook for bail money. He spent that whole night in a holding cell while I called every lawyer in our phone book. Nobody wanted to take a case this crazy until I found one who said he'd meet us in the morning. I didn't sleep at all and drove to the courthouse at 6 a.m. with $5,000 cash for bail. The lawyer looked at all the evidence and said my husband definitely saved that baby from being stolen. He thought we could get the charges reduced to a misdemeanor, but my husband would still face some punishment. While we were at the courthouse, house, my sister's boyfriend showed up at our door completely wrecked. He kept asking how long she'd been lying because he'd painted a whole nursery yellow last month. He'd told his entire family they were having a baby and bought a crib that cost $2,000. I showed him the laptop with her search history going back over a year of fake pregnancy research. He threw up in our bathroom when he saw she'd been taking hormones to make her breasts leak milk. My mom called me crying because Channel 7 had already picked up the story about the attempted kidnapping. Our last name was all over the evening news, and she couldn't leave her house without reporters asking questions. The grocery store clerk asked her if she was the mother of the woman who tried to steal a baby. Dad had to take time off work because his co-workers kept staring and whispering in the break room. The detective called and asked me to come with them to search my sister's apartment for more evidence. We found 3 notebooks filled with details about Becca Torres and her daily schedule at the hospital. She'd written down what the girl ate for lunch and which bathroom she used most often. There were photos of Becca walking to her car that my sister had taken from across the parking lot. She'd studied this poor girl for months, like she was planning a military operation or something. The detective found receipts for the nurse scrubs and a fake hospital ID badge she'd ordered online. While we were searching, I found credit card statements with my name on them that I never opened. My sister had used my social security number to open 3 cards and max them all out. She'd done the same thing to our mom for another $20,000 in fraudulent charges. The detective said identity theft charges would be added to everything else she was facing. We had to file police reports and freeze our credit while dealing with everything else falling apart. 3 days later, Becca Torres went into labor and delivered a healthy baby girl at the hospital. Security guards stayed outside her room the whole time, and Lila Baldwin from social services was there too. My sister had been right about one thing, which was that Becca didn't have any family support, but now she had Lila helping her apply for housing assistance and figure out how to be a mom. There's something deeply unsettling about how calculating the sister was with all those notebooks tracking that poor girl's bathroom schedule and lunch choices. Makes me wonder what else she might have been planning that they haven't found yet in her apartment. The baby was perfect and safe, and my sister was sitting in jail where she couldn't hurt anyone. We thought that would be the end of it, but my sister's lawyer said she wanted to go to trial. She was planning to argue that she was doing a public service by taking the baby from an unfit mother. The prosecutor showed up at our house 2 days later with a stack of papers thick as a phone book. She laid out all the charges against my sister one by one on our kitchen table. Attempted kidnapping of a minor's child carried the most time, then fraud, identity theft, and stalking charges added more years. My husband sat across from her with his own smaller stack of papers for his assault charge. Our lawyer kept saying it was the best outcome we could hope for given what my husband did. The prosecutor agreed to reduce it to misdemeanor assault if he pleaded guilty, and accepted whatever punishment the judge gave. My dad called me that night from the emergency room because his chest hurt and he couldn't breathe right. The doctor said it was a minor heart episode brought on by stress and kept him overnight for observation. He kept asking the nurses how he missed all the signs that his daughter could do something this terrible. Mom sat beside his hospital bed crying and holding his hand while machines beeped around them. My sister's ex-boyfriend called me the next morning asking if I could come to their apartment. He'd been packing up her things and found 3 more fake pregnancy bellies in their bedroom closet. They were different sizes labeled 6 months, 7 months, and 8 months in her handwriting. The receipts showed she'd been buying them for over a year, practicing how to wear them right. He showed me videos on her phone of her trying different walks and poses in their bathroom mirror. There were notes about which clothes hid the straps best and how to sit, so the phone looked natural. My grandmother hadn't left her room in 3 days and wouldn't answer when we knocked. Mom finally used her spare key and found her sitting in the dark staring at nothing. She'd given my sister $5,000 for prenatal vitamins and medical expenses over the past months. The shame of being fooled by her own granddaughter was eating her alive from the inside. Our lawyer called with more bad news about what he'd found digging into my sister's online activity. She'd joined 12 different pregnancy forums under fake names over the past 2 years. Each account had stolen ultrasound photos from real pregnant women that she'd edited with her information. She'd copied other women's pregnancy stories word for word and posted them as her own experiences. The lawyer printed out hundreds of pages showing how she'd studied real pregnancies to make her lie perfect. 2 weeks later, my husband stood in front of the judge and pleaded guilty to misdemeanor assault. The judge looked at all the evidence about why he punched my sister, but said violence is never acceptable. She sentenced him to anger management classes every week for 6 months and 100 hours of community service. My husband nodded and signed the papers without arguing, because he knew he was lucky not to get jail time. I went to the courthouse 3 weeks after that for a hearing about my sister's case. Becca Torres was there too, with her newborn daughter sleeping in a carrier against her chest. She looked so young sitting on that bench, maybe 17 at most, with dark circles under her eyes. When she saw me, she walked over and thanked me for stopping my sister from stealing her baby. Her voice shook when she talked about how scared she was to testify, but she wanted justice. The baby made little noises, and Becca adjusted the blanket around her tiny face with gentle hands. I could see why my sister targeted her, because she was alone with no family in the courtroom. But she had Lila Baldwin now, the social worker assigned to help her figure out being a mom. The psychiatrist's report about my sister came in the mail 2 days before her next hearing. It said she had something called pseudopsych delusion disorder, combined with antisocial behavior patterns. The doctor wrote that my sister genuinely believed she deserved a baby more than unfit mothers. She saw teenage moms and women struggling with addiction as unworthy of their children. The report went on for 20 pages about how her mind justified planning to steal Becca's baby. It made me sick reading how she'd convinced herself she was doing something noble and right. Mom and Dad hired a financial advisor to figure out how much money my sister had stolen from everyone. The total came to almost $50,000 when they added up all the credit card fraud. They started selling things and pulling from their retirement savings to pay family members back. Dad couldn't look anyone in the eye at family dinners and kept apologizing for raising someone who could do this. The shame was destroying him worse than the heart problems, because he felt responsible for not seeing it. 3 weeks after her arrest, my sister sent me a letter from jail written on yellow legal paper. She said I betrayed her and she would never forgive me for ruining her life. The whole letter blamed everyone else for not understanding that Becca didn't deserve her baby. She wrote that teenagers who get pregnant are selfish and irresponsible and don't deserve to be mothers. She said she would have given that baby a perfect life with 2 parents and a nice house. The last line said she was doing the right thing and we were all too stupid to see it. I threw the letter in the trash and tried to forget about it, but 2 days later my husband had to start his community service at the youth center downtown. The judge made him do 100 hours teaching kids about handling anger, which felt weird since he'd punched my sister. He walked into that first session with 12 middle schoolers staring at him and started telling them our whole story about the baby shower. The kids sat there with their mouths open while he explained how he'd followed my sister and discovered her plan to steal a baby. He showed them how anger can protect people sometimes, but violence always has consequences, even when you're right. One kid asked if he regretted hitting her, and my husband said no about stopping the kidnapping, but yes about using his fists. The program coordinator watched from the back and nodded when my husband talked about finding better ways to handle dangerous situations. After 3 weeks of sessions, the kids started opening up about their own anger problems, and my husband actually got good at helping them. Then Becca called me crying because some guy showed up at her apartment claiming to be her brother. She said his name was Cade, and he'd been gone for 4 years because of drugs, but saw the news story about my sister trying to steal her baby. He stood outside her door with flowers and a stuffed animal for the baby, saying he wanted to make things right. Becca didn't trust him at first, but Lila, the social worker, ran a background check and found out he'd been clean for 2 years. Cade had a job at a warehouse and his own apartment, and kept showing up with diapers and formula until Becca finally let him meet his niece. Meanwhile, our whole family started going to therapy together, except for my sister, who was still in jail. The therapist made us sit in a circle and talk about how we felt betrayed by someone we'd known our whole lives. Mom cried every session about missing the warning signs, and Dad kept blaming himself for raising her wrong. The therapist kept saying we were all victims of my sister's lies and manipulation and shouldn't blame ourselves. She said people with my sister's condition are experts at hiding their true selves and fooling everyone around them. We spent 6 sessions just processing the shock of finding out someone we loved could plan something so evil. Then my sister's ex-boyfriend filed a lawsuit against her for emotional distress and fraud. His lawyer sent us papers showing my sister had been taking hormones to make her breasts leak milk and cause mood swings. She'd spent $8,000 of his money on baby stuff and made him tell his whole family about the pregnancy. He wanted damages for the therapy he needed and the money he'd lost preparing for a fake baby. The lawyer said he had a strong case since my sister admitted in jail phone calls that she'd been faking everything. 2 months after the arrest, I had to go to the courthouse and testify before a grand jury. They made me tell the whole story about the baby shower from the beginning while 23 people stared at me. When I got to the part about feeling the foam belly dent under my hands, I started shaking and had to drink water. The prosecutor showed them photos of the fake belly and the receipts for all the different sizes she'd bought online. I testified for 3 hours about everything I'd seen and heard that day, and how my sister's face changed when we caught her. The grand jury took less than an hour to indict her on all charges, including attempted kidnapping and fraud. Meanwhile, Lila kept working with Becca to get her life together with the new baby. She helped Becca fill out applications for housing assistance and signed her up for job training at the community college. Becca wanted to be a dental assistant so she could support her daughter without depending on anyone. Lila took her to the WIC office for formula vouchers and helped her apply for childcare assistance so she could attend classes. Cade started watching the baby while Becca went to appointments, and slowly they built trust between them. But things at home got harder because I couldn't stop thinking about my husband hitting my sister. Even though he'd saved that baby, I kept seeing him pull back his fist and punch her stomach. We'd be eating dinner and I'd remember the sound of his fist hitting the foam and feel sick. I'm trying to understand how the sister's mind worked. She actually took hormones to make her body produce milk? That's such a strange mix of planning and delusion. He noticed me flinching when he moved too fast and finally said we needed help. We found a couples counselor who specialized in trauma and started going every week to work through it. The counselor said my brain was stuck between gratitude and horror, which was normal for such a complicated situation. Then the news coverage brought out more victims we didn't know about. 3 different women called the prosecutor saying my sister had stalked them during their pregnancies too. One woman said my sister showed up at her prenatal appointments asking weird questions about the baby's health. Another said my sister followed her to the parking garage after a birthing class and tried to get her phone number. The third woman had screenshots of my sister joining her pregnancy Facebook group under a fake name and asking for her address. My uncle hired his own lawyer to file a civil lawsuit trying to get back the $30,000 my sister stole. The lawyer said criminal restitution would take years, but civil court could move faster if we had good evidence. He started collecting receipts and bank statements from everyone who'd given my sister money for fake medical bills. The total kept growing as more relatives remembered giving her cash for prescriptions and doctor visits that never happened. Then my sister did something nobody expected and fired her public defender. She stood up in court and told the judge she wanted to represent herself because everyone was against her. She said the public defender was part of a conspiracy to make her look crazy when she was actually trying to save a baby. The judge ordered another psychiatric evaluation to figure out if she was competent enough to make that decision. The psychiatrist spent 4 hours with my sister over 2 days and watched every recording from the jail visits we'd made. Mom had her first panic attack at the grocery store 3 weeks later when a woman she didn't know walked up asking if she was the mother from the news story about the fake pregnancy. Mom dropped her basket and ran to the car where she sat shaking for 20 minutes before she could drive home. Dad found her that night sitting in the dark kitchen crying about how she couldn't face people anymore. The doctor prescribed anxiety medication the next day after Mom described waking up at 3 a.m. with her heart racing and feeling like she couldn't breathe. She started taking the pills, but they made her tired all the time, and she stopped stopped going to her book club and yoga class. Meanwhile, Lila Baldwin kept meeting with Becca and her brother Cade, who'd shown up after seeing the news coverage. Cade had been clean for 2 years and worked construction, but wanted to help his sister after missing so much of her life. Lila introduced him to her husband Ramon, who ran a security company and needed reliable workers for overnight shifts at the office buildings.